we'll be all set. Okay. I would like to call the March 1st, 2021 meeting of the Town of Cicero Zoning Board of Appeals to order. Ms. August, please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia?
Here.
Ms. Luckett?
Here.
Mr. Palladino?
You got on mute, Gary.
Mr. Palladino?
Okay. Did you hear me?
I got you now. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Bick
Present.
and Mr. Stanton.
Here. Please note that tonight's meeting is being simulcast on YouTube. It is also being recorded. In the interim, until we can get Gary Natale on our ad hoc, Rob Bick will be standing in for him. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome our newest ad hoc member, Christopher Daniel. It's down there in my lower left-hand corner of the screen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I would like to present some housekeeping rules to ensure this meeting goes smoothly. Please make all efforts to cut down on background noise or mute yourself, including cell phones and pagers. Please allow everyone ample time to finish speaking. And we're not always the best at this, but please announce your name prior to speaking to assist with following the flow of conversation. Makes Anne Marie's job a lot easier. And if you all would, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everyone. Has everyone read the minutes of the January 11th, 2021 meeting?
Yes.
Okay, are there any corrections?
You mean 2021 meeting?
Did I say 2020?
Yes, you did.
Okay, well, I meant 2021. Thank you for catching me on that.
I couldn't pass it up, Chuck.
I know. Are there any corrections besides my mistaken date?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from January 11th, 2021.
Do I have a
Gary
second?
Palladino, I'll second it.
I'm sorry, Emery, it's Mark. I made the motion.
I got it.
I broke the rule right out of the gate, Chuck.
That's okay. We'll give you a pass this time. It was Mr. Palladino seconding. And Anne Marie, when you're ready, please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia?
Yes, to the motion.
Ms. Luckett?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Palladino?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Bick?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes to the motion. The Cicero Town Board acknowledges the importance of full public participation at all public meetings, and therefore we have afforded the opportunity for town residents to submit public comments for entry into the record with advance notice given prior to this meeting. At this time, I will make a motion that all actions taken tonight are type 2 actions and have a negative impact, that is, no impact on the environment unless otherwise indicated. Do I have a second?
Anne Marie, it's Mark. I'll second it.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia?
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Palladino?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Bick?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes to the motion. We do have proof that all items on tonight's agenda have been advertised as directed by law. I will briefly review the process for tonight's meeting for the benefit of those present that have never been before the Zoning Board of Appeals. First, each applicant will have an opportunity to describe their project. Second, the board will then ask questions about the project. Third, we'll then open a public hearing where people will be able to speak for or against the proposed variance. 4, the applicant will then be given the opportunity to respond to the public input and provide additional information. 5th, Board members will again have the opportunity to question the applicant. 6, the board will openly discuss amongst ourselves the 5 factors that contribute to the final decision. Please note that this board does not have a pre-agenda meeting, so there is no prior discussion of cases outside of this meeting. And finally, a motion will be made either approving or denying the requested variance, seconded, and voted upon. One housekeeping matter we need to address prior to handling our cases tonight is to wrap up the meeting schedule that was presented at our January organizational meeting. The July meeting was extremely inconvenient for all members. I got back to Heidi and she gave me a proposal to shift our July meeting to June 30th, 2021. All other dates would be as presented previously. I would open that up for discussion amongst the board members. Everybody feel comfortable with that?
Say it again, Chuck, July what?
June 30th.
June
That's
30th.
the place of the July meeting.
I think it works better from a schedule perspective, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, it's better than the Friday that I originally suggested, yes. If there's no objections, do I have a second to that motion?
This is Gary Palladino. I'll second it.
And Ms. August, if you would call the roll, please. Oh, Anne Marie, I think you're muted.
Mr. Rabia,
Yes, to the motion. I figured that's what you were saying, but I wasn't going to assume.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Palladino,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Bick.
Yes.
Oh, you can't. And Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. I apologize. Mr. Natalia is having trouble getting on and now he is calling me. Steve, Mr. Procopio, would you mind giving Gary a call? He's trying to call in and I'm having trouble patching him in because it would it causes a horrible echo on my side. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. I may need to have you forward me his phone number, but let me see if I have it here. Chuck, can you just email me that number?
I am going to, I'll direct message you that.
Okay, thanks.
Zoom.
Lay down. Come on. Come on.
You should see something pop up. And again, folks, I apologize for this. It seems like every month we have a new technical difficulty going on here.
Well,
So-
a new laptop is tough for him.
Oh, no, it's tough for me too. I got a new laptop for Christmas. Oh, I think Gary's coming on again.
Chuck, my power is flickering, so if you lose me, that's the reason why.
I saw that. Thank you. I thought you were just running your hand in front of the camera.
No. It's like browning out.
All right. Well, while Mr. Natale's trying to get on, we have our ad hoc here. So without delaying things further, and my apologies if I mispronounced the name, but our first case tonight is Jeff Parzik. Before I ask the applicant to describe their project, I need to make reference to the County Planning Board's decision. Mr. Parzik, I wanted to check in with you. Do you have a copy of this decision from the County Planning Board?
I'm Tim Coyer. Mr. Parzik is here as well. We do have a copy of the County Planning Board meeting minutes or
Great.
referral.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So the county planning board has recommended that this application be denied for the following reasons, and I'm reading directly from this decision tonight so that it gets into the record. The town's investment in planning and code development to support hamlet redevelopment activity is strongly supported by and as an important aspect of county level planning. As such, the board finds the variance requests to be substantial, and the benefit of granting such relief does not outweigh the potential impacts to community character. So with that, at this time, I want to remind the board and the applicant that due to the county planning board's recommendation of denial, any overturning of this recommendation requires a supermajority vote, or 4 out of 5 members must vote to overturn. So all board members have been provided with the minutes also of the February 3rd, 2021 planning board meeting. That did trigger this application. And the board is also reminded that this subject property falls under the Brewerton Road Corridor Regulating Plan, which is Article 13 of the Town Code. It's located also in the downtown core district. Just as a note, neighborhood retail consisting of a hardware store is a permitted use here. Because the board has not had the opportunity to regularly address applications in this regulating plan, I wanted to take some time to review the applicable provisions. So in section 21090D of the town code, chain link fences are prohibited in any frontage, and fences in the required front yard are limited to 30 to 42 inches in height. That same section, Article E, provides fencing guidelines, including requiring fences to be built of attractive, durable materials. And section 21091A for signs. Signs are limited to 1 square foot in area per lineal foot of frontage. And that's very similar to the rest of the town. One of the additional provisions is that for pole mounted signs here, pole mounted sign is freestanding, may be mounted on a double set of poles or single pole or hanging from a single pole. Maximum height is 6 feet. Maximum area per sign face is 18 square feet. So it effectively eliminates that 1 square foot per lineal foot of frontage area. Sign setback shall be 10 feet from driveways, side property lines, 2 feet from corner and side property lines. Pole mounted signs cannot overhang property lines. 1 pole mounted sign is allowed per lot. And then finally, 21091A3E, translucent signs are prohibited. So with that, Tim, if you want to run us through the project here.
Yep. Again, Tim Coyer, iNews and Romans. Mr. Parzik is here as well with me tonight. Basically, we're here in, this is the existing commercial building located at the corner of Route 11 or Brewerton Road and Guy Young Road in Brewerton. It used to be an antique store, I believe, previous to this. Mr. Parzik's looking to put an Ace Hardware into this building. Basically, I broke down the variances we're requesting into 5 separate variances as Chuck went down through. And we're trying to specifically put an outdoor storage area on the Guy Young Road side of the property. That's why we're asking for the fence variances. And we are open to, as far as using different material. I know when we were in front of the planning board, they were talking about using vinyl material. But we would like to try to get that outside storage area over in that area. So one of the things that we kind of have to, that's why I broke everything down, is if we're not allowed to have that outdoor area, and if the board's not open to allowing us to have the outdoor storage area, then the 2 fence variances are a moot point. And if you have visited the site, there's an existing pole out there on the Brewerton Road side that used to have the existing sign on it. He's trying to reutilize that pole, move it a little bit south, and then put the typical square Ace Hardware sign illuminated out there on that existing pole. Again, he's open to working with the board as far as the size and everything. And he just hoped, he was thinking that because the sign was already out there, he was hoping to utilize that existing signpost.
At this time, I'll open the floor for questions and comments from the board.
Tim, he also wants a backlit sign. Can you explain to me?
And Jeff, Jeff, do you want to step in with? I think a backlit sign is like an internally lit sign. That's correct.
Yeah, internally, but again, we're open to any variations of the sign. And if it's total backlit or if it's single letter backlit, we're actually not even. I mean, and one of the reasons we even thought about utilizing this, actually, it's got to be moved because it's got to be 10 foot off the driveway. So it's right now it's got to be moved like 3 or 4 feet. But the code states you can have a monument sign, and again, that's not something we're really opposed to either if this doesn't work, but a monument sign in that location, which can only be 8 foot high, you're looking at the driveway behind the sign right there. That's going to be an impediment to vision going in and out of there. You know, at least this sign is up and away. It's the pole. The pole's been there. It's an existing pole. This is going to have no vision restrictions at all as far as traffic. And that's one of the reasons why we even we started to go to this route is, you know, we thought that would be a better option.
Does the location of the pole require a variance? Is that what you said, Chuck?
Well, if I'm reading the codes right, I think it has to be 10 foot off a driveway, and I believe where it sits right here, as you can see, the driveway lines are painted right there, and you got 2 arrows. I believe that's going to have to go over like about 4 feet or so, which we were going to relocate.
So, I don't know if you guys, if you go up, Chuck, you can see where up to the northeast. And if you want me to share my screen, I can. But we do. There we go. There, you see where the existing pole is, and you can see where we're moving. We're moving it just roughly 9 feet south of where the existing pole is sitting right now.
So you want to use the same pole, but you are going to move it. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terry, I only mentioned that to, I guess, be complete with what the code says in that situation. Can someone tell me what the intent for the finish, for the hardware store is? Is there going to be any cladding? Is the concrete block still going to be visible? What's the plan there?
And Jeff, go ahead.
You broke up a little bit when you're asking about the front of the building.
Yeah. So the building right now is concrete masonry units, right?
Yeah.
Are there any plans changed for the exterior of the store?
The only thing that we're looking into doing is right now, I don't know if we'd have a picture of it either, if Tim has a picture or not, but the front of the building has an existing vestibule that was put in years back. It's got like 4 doors on each side, 2 different entryways, just on aluminum with some windows. One of the things we would like to do is like to just remove that totally and just use and go back to one uniform look for the entire plaza. So instead of having 2 separate entryways exit in this in disrepair, so to speak, vestibule, we put 2 sliders on the front of the plaza, which we think will be a definite upgrade. The plaza would be all look uniform from front to back, or side to side, from Schuster's all the way down. There's one vacant parcel next to us, but other than that, there's no changes. There you go. Tim's got coming up. Nothing would be changed other than, like I said, that vestibule. If we can, it goes straight down. It's in the middle, so to speak. It's a brown, and then there's glass, and we're looking to remove that, and it'll just be one uniform look in the plaza.
Okay.
And also there's another doorway over here that we're going to just block off, and it's going to be just brick, and and we think it's a definite upgrade as far as the aesthetics of the plaza. Look, it'll be a lot cleaner. The soffit will be everything will be uniform, and the doors will be, like I said, the doors aren't really good condition right now. They could be usable. They take some work, which is no problem, but we just think this is a better option. Especially being a hardware store, you got some people coming in and out, sometimes with bigger packages, bigger parcels, going through 2 sets of doors. Might not be the most convenient.
So I know the planning board alluded to vinyl fence What we're running into here is that the town, the town put a significant amount of effort into developing this over what we call the overlay district for Brewerton and setting up an architectural standard in doing so. And this would, I think this would be one of the first major pieces of new development here in quite a while. As far as the code goes, did you ever consider using materials allowed by code for the fence and then talking about going for, an 8-foot tall fence?
We did.
Yeah. And okay, sorry, Tim.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, we definitely did. I mean, I've looked into vinyl. I've looked into stockade. I've looked into those are the two main options. We pretty much backed off at chain link. We weren't married to chain link. The one thing
iron is allowed.
that could be an avenue.
I mean, that would look nice.
The one thing that we were trying to do if we went with the stockade is we need to have stockade, which our dumpster is going to be located in the back of that building, which is around the corner here from the picture you're seeing of that proposed area. That's going to be stockade, hopefully. And if we went with stockade, that would keep sort of things uniform. If we went with vinyl on the side and stockade, I mean, it's not the end of the world. We just thought it might look better if both were the same type of fence. I guess we could look for different avenues with the dumpsters too. And then as far as the size restrictions, just as, I mean, I'm 6'4", and a 6-foot sign or so, I'd like it to be, or we'd like it to be where it's, a deterrent. You can't look over the top of it for some people, so that for safety reasons, precautions, we'd like it to be a little higher. 8 foot was why we agreed on that. But again, we're open to working on anything.
So you're open to complying with the code on material. What you're really asking for is a height. What you really want is the height.
Yes. Yeah, I believe that after initial meeting, they talked about chain link. Chain link was just sort of a fallback option, and it was just, it just seemed like the right thing. And then once we became familiar with the code,
there's other options.
Yeah.
So can we say that variance on the material is off the table, that really what you're asking for is an 8-foot high fence, that the material complies with the code?
Sure. And unless Tim sees anything wrong with that, he's.
No, and like we said in the right from the beginning, Jeff is very willing to work with the board on all of these issues. 8 foot high is what he's trying to obtain to, specifically to keep, deter people from getting into that area. And just so Jeff knows, and just want to make sure, Jeff, you're fully aware, is basically they're talking about, allowing you the 8 foot, but we would just pick a different material that's allowed instead of like using chain link or whatever. Just use like the wrought iron or some of the materials that are allowed for the fencing, but they would in theory possibly give us the 8 foot height.
Yes.
Hey, Chuck, can we go back and talk about the county comment? Because honestly, I read through it a couple times, and I think of Main Street USA, and I think of a hardware store, right? And I don't know exactly what their issue is. They talk about the fence a little bit, but I want to make sure I understand. Maybe talking out with the board would be helpful, but I don't quite understand why they would recommend to not approve this, or at least to say this is not a good project for the area.
So I know Mr. Procopio or Mr. Kerwin could probably echo this, but seeing as the town put a significant amount of effort into and deliberately developed an architectural standard for this area, I think what the county is telling us is that, you guys are going down a path. This is where you wanted to be. And now, the question's on the table as to whether you should just throw that out the window or not.
Fair, but I guess the building's sitting there, right? Here's the way I'm thinking about it, right? The building's sitting there. What are we going to do, right? I mean, I'd much rather see something that attracts folks to the area and gets them to stay in the area, right? Versus an empty building, or whatever the use was before this. So.
No, I agree with that. I also see the other side of it where, you know, even though we don't set precedent with the zoning board, that this would engender a lot of follow-on applications where, well, you let this person do this, why, and this is right in the middle of the downtown core. You know, why are you letting this person do this and not me?
Hey, Chuck, is the, oh, it's Rob Vick. Is the flooring store going to stay in place in that plaza?
Yes, they are.
Okay,
Yes. Right now, it'd be existing would be the flooring store and then us, and then there's one empty parcel to the right of us. And then you have Dave Beck's remodeling, which is sort of kitty corner to us.
does anyone know what an acceptable architectural standard would be for a facade on that building?
I would not.
Steve, do you have an opinion on that?
I couldn't hear the question. It broke up. What was the question?
I said, does anyone know what an acceptable facade would be based on the architectural standards of the overlay?
So they aren't proposing any changes to the facade of the building. So this is before the planning board due to the proposed changes relative to the sign and the fencing and outdoor storage. If it weren't for those things, this may not even be in front of the planning board. So the overlay ordinance allows redevelopment or reuse of existing locations without requiring a thorough review or compliance with the overlay standards. That's really set up for new development and allows the planning board to look at site plans with consideration for the existing location and site, as long as there's an improvement made, not necessarily requiring the existing site to be in full compliance with the overlay standard. Does that make sense?
Right, Steve. So that's exactly my point. So what do you think the county is asking for here, right? I'm not sure I understand what the county wants us to do.
My interpretation of their comment was relative specifically to the sign and the fence.
Okay.
I don't know if the chairman would agree with that.
I do. Yeah, they called, those were the two items that they specifically called out.
Okay, fair enough. So the fence, I get, and then the sign we'll get to. Okay.
This is Gary Palladino. I have a couple questions. You want to use the outdoor, I mean, the reason for the fence is you want to use some of the outdoor area for storage. And I believe I read for mulch, soil, something that could stay outside and weather the conditions without problems. How, if it is going to be the mulch and the soil, how high do you plan on stacking them? And do you plan on using the, if you are going to stack them, are you going to use the steel storage racks? And if so, how high are they going to be? I'm trying, and the reason I'm asking that, and I know I'm rambling right now, but the reason I'm asking that is because I'm trying to get a feel as to why we are going for an 8-foot high fence when actually we're only permitted a 3.5-foot high, I believe, or something of that on that front yard. So we're asking for more than double. Please.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, we were just asking for security purposes, just so it's you know, it's not like when originally when we were talking chain link, we were talking about having the vinyl strips down, privacy slats down, just trying to keep it so it's not you know, anybody looking to see what's in there, any kind of a theft situation like that. We just want to keep it for security reasons. Like I said, I mean 6 foot or even like a 3 foot is just, you know, from a security standpoint, that just wouldn't work for us. And we're just trying to keep it so it's not, you can't just easily see over the top, that there's some deterrent, and it's you know, for security reasons. But
if someone was to,
as far as the racking, I right now we don't even have any plans for racking.
you don't.
No.
Is 8 foot sort of a best practices in your industry?
I mean, to be honest, no. To be honest with you, I just thought it was sort of a happy medium. And like I said, I mean, it may seem simplistic, but I judge it from me. I'm 6'4". I didn't want to be able to look over the top or anybody my height would be. And I just thought 8 was, it's not too high. It was just sort of a happy medium.
Is this going to be, are you going to have a gate or a way to get into that storage area from the Guy Young roadside?
Yeah, there is going to be a gate on the 42-foot side.
There is, okay.
Plan. That's what the plan is.
Okay.
I noticed too that on the 18.1 foot side on the existing structure, there may have been a doorway there at one point. Is there any plans to open that back up, or?
No, that doorway is planned to be closed because it's an entrance for a parcel that would no longer be there.
Gotcha.
There's 2 different parcels and combining into one. So we just have the one entrance. And that's like on here, the glass and the metal entrance is the one thing that we talked about too, is that's on there right now. It's 34. That's what we're talking about possibly removing, and you'd have nothing to just be a clean frontage of the whole plaza. And then we'd install 2 sets of automatic doors.
Okay.
We'd keep that guardrail right up in front of it also, which matches the guardrails that run along the plaza front.
Jeff, approximately how much of the floor plan here we're showing on the plan is consumed by Schuster's?
Schuster's is your area you got 48-foot frontage, and then there's their doorway is that 8'9", and then it goes down to the dotted line, and that dotted line area in the back is 74, where the 74 is a warehouse area that would be utilized by us.
Okay, so you guys are going to take that whole back area and then up to whatever the parcel is adjoining the vacant spot adjoining you guys on the north side. Okay.
Yes, and that the space back there, which is behind Schuster's, is 3,500 or so square foot that we would utilize as warehouse space.
Okay.
Okay, so right now, and one thing I didn't mention is that one of the reasons why we are going through all this is that the zoning board is charged with approving the minimum variance necessary to actually accomplish what the applicant is trying to do. That combined with the Onondaga County Planning Board notice is why we're going through these iterations of talking out the fence. So what I'm hearing is that you'd be amenable to changing the material to something similar to a stockade fence if you were allowed to keep it at 8 feet high for your own security purposes.
Yeah, no, we would definitely open to that stockade for sure.
I wouldn't tie him to stockade. I would just say something that complies with the code.
Okay.
I wouldn't tie him to that material.
Yeah, this is Steve. Yeah, I agree with Terry, Chuck, because stockade is one of the other listed styles of fences that's prohibited.
We definitely don't want to do that.
There you go.
I apologize.
But again, we were just looking for uniformity, and one thing we couldn't do is we know we're fencing in the 2 dumpsters. Hope to fence in the 2 dumpsters. And vinyl wasn't an option for the 2 dumpsters. We knew that for a fact because they don't make gates that big enough to support 2 dumpsters. And to put vinyl fencing around a pair of dumpsters is just throwing your money away, because the companies that pick those things up would have those vinyl fences broken in no time. So we were just trying to look for something a little more durable behind there. And then again, we were just trying to visit uniformity, making the place look good. So that's why we sort of got into stockade, but maybe
wood material is allowed.
Right.
Okay, under certain requirements, maybe you have to paint it or whatever. It's just that stockade style that is listed as something they don't want.
Yeah. Well, actually, the couple quotes I had was I don't know if this makes a difference or not, but it was dog-eared. It's technically not stockade. It's dog-eared. It's like a rounded top. I don't know if that's what changes it from a wooden fence to a stockade, is the top on the points, but any type of wood fence we'd be open to.
That we would probably leave to either Mr. Procopio and his people, or the planning board, depending on who's making that decision. So as far as my fellow board members are concerned, are we at the point where you think we're done with the fence and we can move on to the sign? Or do we want to talk a little bit more about the fence?
Good with the fence.
Okay. So I know that the desire is to reuse the existing sign, but to me, it seems like in justifying this, there's a number of things that are violating what the overlay district says that are causing me to have a little bit of heartburn about basically pushing this through. The biggest thing being the backlit sign. I guess, Mr. Procopio, that would mean that if we don't have a backlit sign, the sign would have to have some kind of external spotlight on it if you want it lit.
I think
Yeah,
the letters can be lit, can't they? Did I read that?
I'd have to look at this section again, but I think, Mr. Chairman, you're correct. Some other form of acceptable external lighting would have to be considered.
Okay.
I mean, if I could just ask a question too, if like I talked about earlier, as far as like a monument sign, which is approved in those areas, I believe, if I read the code correctly, is like, and again, you know, we're open to anything, and it's not like we're married to that type of sign. We're open to working and trying to make it work for everybody. But if there was a monument sign and we did go that, we had an 8-foot type of monument sign, because there's other options, which is more consistent in the Hamlet area, those type of monument signs. Would we run into any difficulty with like what I was talking about before? Would that bring us into another avenue what might be a sticking point, which would be visibility going in and out? Or is that something that wouldn't hinder what we're trying to do?
So I can probably answer that. Jeff, we could do a monument sign potentially, but we'd have to look at where we would locate it on the site. That's more of a planning board thing, we would probably get into like maybe putting it down at the corner of the two roads instead of up near the driveway entrance. Because you're right, if you put it up near the driveway entrance, you run into possible site distance issues and pulling in and out of there with that kind of thing. So a monument sign would have to be, I think, totally relocated to like the southeast corner of the site at the intersection to allow for site distances to be properly set.
Okay, yeah, no, that's what I was thinking too. So I'm glad we verified that.
Apologize, I'm just making notes here. What does the rest of the board think about this?
I mean, I think what I heard him say, Chuck, is they're willing to, you know, structure a sign so it complies with the, you know, the overlay district requirements, right?
Right.
Yes, like.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
So really, the only thing we're asking for is for the fence to be 8 foot high. That's the only variance.
That's the way I'm taking it. If we agree that we're just going to comply with the code for the signs.
So Jeff, just so you are making sure, basically we're talking about breaking down all our variances to basically the one variance to allow for the fence to be 8 foot high. We'll decide on the material that is allowed per code, and then we'll go into getting a monument sign design that meets the code, and you and I and the planning board will decide where that goes.
That if that seems agreeable to me. I mean, like I said, we're not trying to, you know, cause any waves. You know, we just want to do, you know, we want to make everything happen and get this done and you know, and hopefully move forward with this project.
No, we definitely appreciate that and the willingness to compromise, because it does go a long way towards, you know, showing that, or at least documenting that we're being, you know, everything's working as we're granting a variance, hopefully. So With that, are there any other questions? Because we'll get to the public hearing portion of it. Okay.
One thing, Chuck, sorry,
ahead,
Tim
go
or Jeff, is there going to be a sign on the building as well, similar to what maybe Schuster's has up in that peak area? Are you guys planning that?
Yep, we're gonna put
Okay.
a Ace Hardware sign right up at that peak. Yep.
All right, perfect. And that's more planning board than anything else. I just was wondering if there was going to be signage up there.
So at this time, I will open the public hearing. Mr. Procopio, has anyone submitted comment letters for this project?
We have not received any public comment.
Okay. So this time I will close the public hearing. At this time, are there any additional questions or do the applicants wish to provide any more information?
Nope, we're all set.
Okay. So I think we've already talked about the county planning boards. I think we've already talked about the county planning board's opinion and reading into this, that the town has deliberately set a standard for development in the area. Definitely noting the applicant's willingness to compromise on quite a few things. With that, would anyone like to review the 5 factors?
I can do it if nobody else wants to.
I got it on my screen.
Well, don't fight over it, guys.
You want me? I can do it if nobody else wants to.
Terry, you can go ahead. That's
Want me
fine.
to go ahead?
Yes.
Okay. So the 5 factors, whether an undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties would be created. I'm going to say no. The applicant is willing to use fence materials that comply with the ordinance. And his purpose is for security, of keeping his goods safe and secure. And he's he's actually hidden behind a little, I don't know what you call it, a little, what do you call it, bump out in the building. So I think there's not an undesirable change in the neighborhood.
And just as a reminder, if we could go down the list of board members, please. For agreement.
This is Mark. I agree.
This is Gary, I agree. Palladino.
Rob, I agree.
And Chuck
Yeah.
agrees.
Okay, I'll agree.
Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. And I would say no, the code only allows a 42-inch high fence, and that doesn't provide him enough security, so he needs a variance.
Okay, Mr. Rabia,
Yep, this is Mark. I agree.
Palladino,
Yes, I agree.
Mr. Beck,
Phone, I can hear everybody.
I agree.
okay.
Number 3, are we okay? Whether the requested variance is substantial. I didn't calculate the exact percentage, but I believe that is a substantially higher fence, but it's not a reason to deny the variance.
Yeah, this is Mark Emery. I agree. I mean, it's this fence is there to solve the security issue, and I think it almost has to be in that height. I think.
Mr.
This is
Palladino,
Gary. I agree. I know we're following front yard standards, or front yard code, and this is actually on the side towards the back of the building. So I don't see where it really would be an issue. So I agree.
Okay, number 4, whether the proposed variance.
we did,
Agrees too.
wait, what about the other, Mr. Beck or Mr. Natale and Mr. Stanton?
I agree. It makes perfect sense.
Okay, Mr. Stanton.
I agree also.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Ms. Luckett.
It's okay. Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions. I'm gonna say no. You know, like Gary said, it's on the side of the building. It's gonna be made of a material that complies with the code, so I think we're okay.
I totally agree.
Gary Palladino, I agree.
Mr. Beck
I agree.
and Mr. Stanton.
I agree.
And then whether the alleged,
I can't,
oh, sorry. Chuck, you're muted.
I think he's probably trying to talk to Gary.
I apologize, guys. Gary's been calling in. He's having some serious audio issues, but I can't tap him in because it causes some crazy feedback on my side. So
Can I go ahead? And then whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, yes, the applicant is choosing to build a fence that does not comply with the zoning ordinance.
Anne Marie, it's Mark, I agree with that assessment.
Gary Palladino, I agree.
Rob Beck, I agree.
Chuck Stanton agrees.
Am I okay to make a motion?
Absolutely.
Okay. I make a motion to approve an area variance where the applicant is seeking to construct an 8-foot fence made of a material that complies with the zoning code, where a maximum height of 42 inches is allowed.
I'll second that motion.
Who seconded? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Chuck Stanton. I'm violating my own rules. Chuck Stanton seconds the motion. Ms. August, if you'd call the roll, please.
Mr. Rabia,
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Palladino,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Bick,
Yes to the motion.
and Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. Motion carried. Congratulations.
Luck, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our second case tonight is the Bluff at Oneida Shore. The application listed David Valenti is representing the application. I'm wondering if that's still the case.
Yes, Jamie Sutphin. I'm the attorney for the Bluffs at Oneida Shores, and I'll be the main presenter this evening. Also present is David Valenti, a partner in the Bluffs at Oneida Shores, as well as Eric Stopp, who is the appraiser who put in the evidence that is before you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr.
I
Stanton.
did want,
I'm sorry, Mr. Stanton?
yes, Mr. Palladino. I
Before
was going to give you time later, but if you want to jump in now.
No,
that's
I don't. I want to hear what you. I'll wait for my turn, Chuck. I'm sorry.
Nobody really wants to hear what I say, Gary.
Yes.
So because we're dealing with a use variance and an area variance, the county planning board has had to address each separately. That's why there's two decisions. I'm assuming that the applicant has a copy of the decisions. With regards to the proposed use variance, the county has no objections. And with regards to the area variance, the county has no objections. And just for the benefit of the board, I'm going to propose that we handle the use variance first, since if we can't get past the use variance, there's no need for the area variance. We'll question the applicant as normal, and we'll conduct the public hearing as a combined public hearing for both the use and area variances. However, we will make two separate motions, the first for the use variance and the second for the area variance. And Mr. Palladino, I know you had something you wanted to cover, so go right ahead.
Yes. Just before we proceed with the Bluffs at Oneida Shore LLC variance, I wanted to bring to everyone's attention that Mr. Valenti and I had some past dealings. We'd entered into a contract at one time, real estate contract, and ultimately it did not materialize, resulted in no transactions. Now, I mention that just purely for transparency. I wanted to let the board know that we had some dealings, and I wanted to give Mr. Valenti and the members of the Bluff at Oneida Shores an opportunity to either ask me to recuse myself, or if they're good with me going along with this and proceeding with this variance. I personally have no problem. Let me say this first. I personally have no problem. I can separate personal and business, and I've always done that with the town. But in the town of Cicero, you do occasionally come across people that you've had dealings with. So, like I said, total transparency. Just want to let everybody know. So if the board would wish that I continue or recuse, it's up to them, and as well as Mr. Valenti and his party.
So speaking for the applicant, we feel confident that Mr. Palladino can move forward in a way that would be objective, and I thank him very much for bringing that forward to us. And if the board has any concerns, feel free to chime in on that.
My personal opinion, I appreciate the fact that everyone's accepted or at least the applicant has accepted Mr. Palladino's explanation. He and I have talked rather at length about that, and based on his past history with the board, I believe he can be objective on this. So I leave it up to the other board members.
I appreciate the full disclosure and trust his expertise.
I'm good, Chuck.
Very good, thank you.
I'm good.
Thank you, Terry. So at this point, Jamie, if you want to run through the project, we'd be more than happy to hear.
Sure, just as far as the project itself, Mr. Valenti's here, and I'll just let him talk real briefly about what the project is, but it's pretty much set right forth on the Terry Horst plan that's in front of you. Dave, if you just want to take a minute to say what your vision is, and then we'll get down to the legal stuff.
Good evening, everyone. I trust that everybody can hear me.
Yes.
My name is David Valenti. I'm one of the managing members of the Bluff at Oneida Shores LLC, along with my three other neighbors. The four of us have gone into this project where we thought we would improve the remaining lot that has been vacant for quite some time with a recreational amenity such as the tennis court and basketball court. We think that the recreational amenity fits the neighborhood. The lot's been somewhat difficult to sell over the years, and we feel that the tennis court and the basketball court would certainly bring much more value to our neighborhood than the hardship that we've had with the building lot. And we're here before the board tonight, hoping that we get your approval.
So it would be private for the benefit of the three lot owners on the opposite side of the street and of the Bluffs. It's I wouldn't even call it a basketball court. It's kind of a dribble around area, and a tennis court and some substantial amenities. I should state that the planning board has seen this plan in kind of deciding how to go about getting what is desired here by the applicant. There was an idea that perhaps the subdivision map could be modified in some way that would allow that, but ultimately planning board said, you need to go to the ZBA on the use variance, and so that's why we're here. And then we'll go back to planning board. I understand that generally speaking, they were not opposed to the the way that this is proposed to be built, but that would be an issue for the planning board at a later point.
I do want to say too, or at least personally, I'm very appreciative of all the backup material that you presented to us. This is probably one of the better laid out use variances that we've seen since I started here. Is there anything that you would like to talk about respective to that, to the use variance itself?
I just a couple of things, and thank you, Mr. Stanton. It was, I kind of enjoyed putting this one together. You know, a lot of people come and say, I want to get a use variance. And many of you may know I do a lot of town work and I represent towns, and I'm like, get out of here. You know, that's not going to work. But this was very unique. And I worked with the team to really talk about why this met all the criterion, and did some substantial legal research. And I just felt quite confident that we in fact did meet the criterion, which is a kind of an unusual circumstance. So that putting together a package like this ends up kind of being fun and quite comprehensive and easy. So I think just on the criterion, again, because this is so comprehensive, and I don't want to bore people with all of it again. The use variance relief is sought due to an unnecessary hardship, and that's the standard. And then kind of from that full bubble, you go into the various criterion. And the main thing that people have a hard time proving on use variances, but that we had quite an easy time proving, is the no reasonable financial return in real dollars and cents proof. As your counsel can tell you, that's a standard. So Eric Strop is here, and I don't know if you have any questions for him specifically about that. He did do an analysis of the financial return, how much was paid for the lot, what would happen if we tried to get a residential use. It's been challenging, difficult. The price is nothing that would be gleaned from that as compared to the cost of the lot and the reasonable cost of the lot, right? So the cost of the lot and to develop it was very substantial, and our appraiser even reduced that, saying, well, you know, I know it might have cost maybe $300,000 to develop this lot as compared to all the others, but he did back off the values, the relative increased values of the lakefront lots in doing that. And still the price that could be gleaned for this lot does not come near the valid investment in it. Eric, would you like to, or does anyone want to hear any more on that? As Mr. Strop is here.
What I would ask right now is our counsel, Terry Kerwin, do we need to enter this into the record? Do we need some kind of basic summary of it, or can we just apply Exhibit A as presented?
Yeah, I think you can just apply Exhibit A as presented. It's already in the record by the filing.
Okay. How does the rest of the board feel about that?
I'm fine moving in that direction. Chuck, I think, like you said earlier, this is probably the best example of a use variance I've seen.
I'm sorry, Mr. Beck, were you saying something?
I just said I have no problem with it.
Okay.
We have the information.
Ms. Luckett? She's on mute, but I'm trying really hard to read her lips. Sorry.
I was just saying that they've shown that they've made earnest attempts to try to sell the land as a residential lot, and that's failed. So that, you know, I'm okay with that.
Mr. Palladino?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
All right, so that gets us past the use variance and over to the area variance, which we have somewhat talked about, but my understanding is that the area variance is predicated based on non-residential use requiring a 2-acre lot, and we have a set size for our lot. Is that correct?
That's correct. because the lot, I mean, the whole reason why it's a problem selling it is also the reason why we need the area variance even for this kind of a use, because of the size of it. Initially, you'll see that there was a variance requested on a side yard setback, but Mr. Procopio advises that should not be necessary because of how you define a structure. So it's not really a structure, it's just some pavement actually that has that 30-foot. So we would withdraw that second variance that's in the application and just request the one for the acreage.
Great, thank you. Before I go to, and not in the interest of rushing this, but before I go to the public hearing, does the board have any other questions?
I'd like to ask a couple. Can you have the 4 neighbors agreed to, will you put a deed restriction in their deeds? Is that how this is going to work?
We in fact are going to do that because also as the owners of the lots that are the lake facing, they don't ever want that to go, go the way of seed or not be maintained or go to some other owner. So the deed restriction is in fact what we would take it certainly as a condition, but it's intended that at all times this lot will have to be maintained by the lot owners of those lots.
And they're going to have to jointly pay for upkeep and have somebody come in and maintain the stormwater?
Correct. Well, the stormwater basin actually does belong to the town, but the area around it and the landscaping and so forth would be maintained by this group. And it would be quite substantial landscaping and amenities here that would need to be maintained. So they're willing to do that and would be creating within the LLC, the Bluffs at Oneida Shore, a whole set of covenants that would run with the land. And they would run with this land and they would run with the homeowners.
My only concern is I haven't seen proof that they actually have agreed to that. So
in this application, we did in fact state that it was agreed upon. We can provide something to that effect.
I mean, that's my concern. Is this thing going to be a white elephant that just sits there and gets overgrown and becomes a maintenance issue for codes or something?
Sure, and we would be more than happy to provide the signatures of everyone and the consent to those covenants.
Excuse me, this is Gary Palladino. To go along, I think, with what Terry, and I'm going to put some words in Terry's mouth, is doing is if you look at the protected covenant, I didn't know if it, it says that basically nothing can be done without complete consent of the other parties, and I don't know if that was changed or not to amend this.
So it will be amended. We didn't amend it because we didn't know what was, we wanted to make sure that we got the go ahead.
Okay.
So yes, we do have the wording on that ready to go.
Perfect.
Have any of the neighbors on the west side of I guess it would be on the north side of this weighed in about noise or anything? Any issues that came up?
I don't know if I know this was published and sent out to the neighboring properties. I have not heard anything myself.
We have not received any public comment.
Okay. And it's not going to be lit, so that's not an issue, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Oh.
Maybe you guys said it, I missed it. Will it be fenced? Will the area be fenced? Around the courts?
Yes, may I speak, David?
Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, the perimeter of the tennis court will have a typical fence that you'd see around a tennis court. That is planned for this project.
Okay.
And there's plenty of buffering on what I believe Terry referred to. It would be what the south side of the property. It really wouldn't even be visual to those properties situated along Bartell Road because of the landscape that's buffering the two parcels or the two properties.
Okay. Thanks.
What will you do if kids start coming in and, well, I guess it's gonna be locked, right? You're gonna lock it?
There'll be secured locks.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and remember, they live right there, right? So in a way, it's like their own backyard. So
Yeah, yeah.
hopefully it will be respected.
That's all the questions I have.
I actually have a question for Terry Kerwin again. I'm just seeing as at least two of our members, I think, are concerned about the buy-in of the other residents. Is there a way that we can make this contingent on the approval of all the residents?
Well, you can condition it, and Jamie and I can talk about her proposal to get it done.
Sure.
Okay.
I would be happy to accept that condition, and then council will just, I'll work out the words. I'll send them to Terry. If he doesn't like the words, we'll fix the words. We do words. We don't do these pictures so well.
Yeah, that would work, Chuck.
So Terry, just for my clarification, we could proceed tonight and then leave it up to the both of you to figure out what the condition is, or do we need to?
Well, you know what the condition is. You can articulate the condition today, and Jamie and I will work on implementing your condition legally. And I don't foresee any problem with it.
Okay, thank you. So does the board have any other questions before I open up the public hearing? Okay. At this time, I will open up the public hearing. Mr. Procopio, I'm hearing from you that we have not received any comments on this.
That's correct.
Okay, so at this time, I will close the public hearing. Is there any other information that the board wishes or any other comments that anyone wishes to make?
Chuck, just to be clear, what we're talking about now is just the fact to permit a tennis court and part of a basketball court on that piece of land, correct? And
yes, that's all my intent was with this, and making that contingent on or conditional on the approval of all the people who would benefit from it.
And to go further, and the only reason we're even talking about this is because it is permitted as a secondary use, but not defined as a primary use on a piece of land.
That is
So
my
understanding. Why would that even matter? I'm just making sure. Okay.
Mr. Palladino, I'm with you, but I think that would entail a change to the town code that none of us can.
At least not right now.
That's correct. So because I broke this up into two sets, unless there's any other comments.
I got one more thing, Chuck, and maybe you're going to address it, but Mr. Valenti said something about a typical fence. And not that I'm a tennis court expert, but the typical tennis court fence that I see probably exceeds the code. So we're going to need to address the fence height, or no? Is that already in there, Steve?
I think we allow 30-foot high fences for, isn't that correct? We allow tennis court fences to be very high.
Yeah, I believe the number is 12 feet in the fence ordinance for tennis courts. Also, the planning board has at their discretion as they review this for site plan. A lot of these elements you're discussing, as well as the fence.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I was off by a few feet, and I could see Mr. Palladino laughing at me about that, but we'll get past that. Are there any other questions from the board? Okay. Well, because I broke this up into two separate applications, then I will take on both the use and the area variance. We'll start with the use variance. So this use variance will be for the bluff at Oneida Shores. And we do actually have different criteria for use variances. The first is that the applicant cannot realize a reasonable return as shown by competent financial evidence. The lack of return must be substantial. My answer to that is that yes, the applicant cannot realize a reasonable return. And without going into specific detail, I'm going to pull in Exhibit A of the application as an explanation for this.
Anne Marie, it's Mark. I agree with Chuck. It was the best presentation we've seen ever.
Then Terry, I think you're up next.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I'm sorry.
Mr. Beck.
Yeah, I think it's a great use of the property.
Great.
No,
Maldino, I skipped over you, sorry.
yeah, I agree.
Okay, very good. So the second test is that the alleged hardship relating to the property is unique, which is the hardship may not apply to a substantial portion of the zoning district or neighborhood. My answer to that is that yes, the hardship is unique. And I'm pulling in Exhibit A of the application into reference, and I can say just based on the application, the tennis court and the basketball court, that this is singularly unique to this area.
Chuck, it's Mark. I agree.
And the property is also unique because it's encumbered by that stormwater management basin, which makes it less desirable for residential.
Point. So
Yes, I agree.
It's Rob, I agree.
very good. The third test is the requested use variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. My answer to that is yes. Again, pointing in Exhibit A of the application, and my personal opinion here is that a tennis court and a basketball court are basically the essential character of a residential neighborhood.
Chuck, it's Mark. I agree with you.
This is Terry. I agree.
Gary Palladino, I totally agree.
Rob, I agree as well.
Very good. Thank you. The fourth and final is whether the alleged hardship has been self-created. We take different twists on this depending on what the application is. My feeling on this is no. While there is an aspect of self-created hardship that exists, it is important to note that the circumstances of the creation of the parcel was not the hardship. Rather, it was the necessity to use the parcel as a retention basin, which was required by a state agency. It's not under the control of the applicant. And that contributes to the inability to use this property consistent with the R10 zoning classification.
I was wondering how you're going to nuance that. Very nice job. I agree.
Thank you.
This is Terry. I agree.
Gary, I agree as well.
Rob, I agree.
Very good. Thank you. So with that, I believe that the applicant has proven the unnecessary hardship through the application of the 4 tests as required by the state statutes. And with that, in finding such hardship, the ZBA shall grant a variance to allow the use of the property in the manner described below, which is the minimum variance that should be granted in order to preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and the health, safety, welfare of the community. So that use would be an outdoor recreational use consisting of a tennis court and a half basketball court. This is based on the condition. So the ZBA finds the following conditions are necessary in order to minimize adverse impacts upon the neighborhood or community for the reasons following. So the first condition and only condition will be that the applicant shall find or shall get confirmation from each of the landowners that contribute to this that they agree with and will contribute to this development.
do we want to say that it's a deed restriction?
I guess that would be a question for, again, Terry Kerwin. I'm going to run out of questions here pretty soon.
I mean, I would want to make it a legal obligation, right, to maintain it? So that it should.
Yeah, and I think that's what Jamie's talking about, and
Yeah,
she and I will implement that legal obligation that you're creating as a condition.
Okay, so I would amend that to include what Mr. Kerwin was saying. So with that, that is in the form of a motion.
I'll second it. Anne Marie, it's Mark. I'll second the motion.
Okay. And Anne Marie, when you're ready, please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia.
Yes to the motion.
Oh, yeah. Ms. Luckett,
yes to the motion.
Mr. Palladino,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Beck,
Yes to the motion.
and Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. So one motion down. So the next one is the area variance. And before I talk about the area variance, I am going to cover the 5 factors that we have to discuss before granting such a variance. The first is whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties would be created. My answer to that is no. I believe the proposed facility will complement the neighborhood by creating a common area for the residents.
Mark, I agree with you.
This is Terry, I agree.
Gary, I agree.
Rob, I agree.
The second is whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. My answer to that is no. Following the approved use variance allowing this property to be used as an outdoor recreational facility, the size of the lot is a restriction and cannot be changed through acquisition of more property as all the surrounding lots are currently occupied.
Yep, agree.
Agreed. This is Terry.
Gary, I agree.
Rob, I agree.
Good. So the third one, whether the requested area variance is substantial. My answer to that is yes. The proposed 0.74 acres of buildable land represents a 1.26 acre or 63% variance of the required 2 acre minimum non-residential use lot size. I do note though that the applicant really does not have a way around this specific criteria.
Anne Marie, it's Mark. I agree with Chuck.
This is Terry, I agree.
Gary, I agree.
Rob, I agree.
Good. Fourth is whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. My answer to this is no. The proposed construction is at grade and while largely non-permeable exists next to a retention basin sized to accommodate the development as well as a closed drainage system.
I agree.
This is Terry, I agree.
Gary, I agree.
Rob, I agree.
The fifth is whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. My answer to that is yes. The applicant is proposing to construct a non-residential use facility on a lot that is less than 2 acres in size. It should be noted that this is not necessarily a reason to deny the variance.
Agree, Chuck.
This is Terry, I agree.
Gary, I agree.
Rob, agree.
So with that, I would make a motion for an area variance for the Bluff at Oneida Shores LLC to allow the construction of an outdoor recreational facility on a property with 0.74 acres of unencumbered property where a minimum of 2 acres is required for a non-residential use.
It's Mark Emery. I'll second it.
Very good. Emery, when you're ready, if you please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia,
Yes to the motion.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Palladino,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Beck,
To the motion.
and Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. Motion's carried. Thank you. So congratulations, guys. You got your two motions. And assuming that you can work everything out with Terry on the language, I believe we'll be good to go.
Thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this. Very much appreciate it. Mr. Procopio, are we on for Planning Board Wednesday?
I will be able to confirm that tomorrow.
Okay. Thank
Yep.
you very much.
Sure.
Okay, very good. Is there any other business before this board tonight? All right, there being no other state of business before this board, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, Ms. Luckett, a second. Do I have a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
All right, Mr. Palladino. The ayes have it, and the meeting is adjourned. Mike, you can shut off the recording. And thanks again.